water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of all four elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years passed and my brother and I discovered the new Avatar, an airbender named Aang. And although his airbending skills are great, he has a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone. But I believe Aang can save the world.
And welcome back, everybody. I hope
Hello there.
everyone's doing all right during quarantine, hanging in there, trying to stay as sane as possible. I know a lot of people are either reading books, watching movies, binging shows. I'm actually I'm a couple of episodes into Tiger King now. I'm kind of mad I didn't start that with everyone else, but live and learn. But a bigger regret I have is a few years back, I bought the first season DVD for Avatar the Last Airbender. And I watched most of it, I never finished it, and then for whatever reason, I never continued on with it. Now this is a show that I missed when it was on Nickelodeon, whatever reason, foolish it may be. Didn't watch it back then. Tried to watch it a few years ago, that didn't happen. And actually a couple of weeks into quarantine, one of the other Grey boys, Will, brought it up. He said, dude, you should be watching it. Watch it online, you'll find everything there. So I kind of started a few weeks back watching season 1 through the DVD, and luckily before I could even get to season 2, Netflix released all 3 seasons. So I was like, perfect. And basically the last few days have been watching all 3 seasons of the show. And long story short, it's by far one of the best shows I've ever watched. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about. Avatar the Last Airbender. Today's episode of the Greycast is brought to you by hydroxychloroquine. No, I'm just kidding. Also, side note, if you didn't like that introduction, I'll be very heartbroken. I worked somewhat hard on that. Not too hard, but I'd like to think that was my ultimate creativity right there. So, little backstory. Avatar the Last Airbender was a work of art, because I know it's a debate. Is it a cartoon? Is it an anime? It's just art, okay? Just accept that. That aired on Nickelodeon in the mid-2000s, if I'm not mistaken. It was... The more I think about it, it might be the best thing that Nickelodeon's ever put out, besides SpongeBob, which I think is understandable. You know, pre-SpongeBob SquarePants movie SpongeBob is just god-tier level stuff. But this is on a different level for many reasons. Avatar had everything going for it as I watched it. An incredible story, some of the best characters I've seen in any form of media, great music, beautiful art style, great arcs for all the characters, especially the villain. One of the best redemption arcs I've ever seen. You know, it's what, I'm not going to get into it because I could go on it for 7 hours. It's what Kylo Ren should have been. Long story short. He never, got that full redemption. He just is like, oh, I'll do it because, my mom died. Now I'll be good. No. Oh my god, I'm losing track. Anyway, let's start with Season 1. So, Season 1, we're introduced to our 3 main characters, Aang, Katara, and Sokka. Now, Sokka and Katara are 2 siblings who live in the Water Tribe in the South Pole. Now, in this world, the world is divided into 4 nations, Earth, Water, Fire, and Air. And before the 100-Year War, all these nations lived in harmony and peace. But one of the Fire Lords 100 years ago decided, oh, we have such a great nation. Let's just share our greatness with the entire world, which is just, causing murder, genocide. It's just psychotic. Now, our main character, Aang, was destined to become the Avatar, who... The Avatar is one spiritual being that lives within a human, and it goes from person to person, so every time an Avatar dies, basically the next person who happens to be born in the world becomes the next Avatar. Now, usually Avatars don't, from what I understand, they don't begin any training or even told that they're the Avatar until they're around 16 years old or so. But the Airbenders, which nation Aang was born into, they saw the threat coming, and they knew from the time Aang was probably 4 or 5 years old that he was going to be the Avatar, based on tests that they did on him. So he was only 10 years old at the time, but due to the Fire Nation literally on their way to wage war, they told Aang, "You're the Avatar, you need to stop hanging out with all your friends. You need to give up everything you know and love. You need to go and train right now." And as a 10-year-old kid, he said absolutely not. And he ran away. And by running away, he actually saved himself. Because if he had stayed, he would have died along with the rest of the Airbenders who were killed by the Fire Nation. As Aang disappeared, he basically nearly died and went into the Avatar state and froze himself in the ocean for 100 years. And this is where Katara and Sokka find him. And, by sheer coincidence or fate, they find him, they save him, and their journey begins. They're brave enough to go with him around the world so he can learn the other 3 elements he needs to defeat the Fire Lord. And throughout their entire journey, or at least the first 2 seasons of this show, they are hunted and tracked down by the son of the Fire Lord, banished Prince Zuko, who is one of the better villains I've ever seen in a show and has the best redemption arc I've ever seen in a character, possibly. Long story short, Zuko was banished by his father simply for speaking out and having a valid opinion, saying, "Why would you take your infantry soldiers and put them on the front line where they're destined to die?" Now, the point of this was just because they were fodder. The point was to have a sneak attack while the infantry was just murdered. And the Fire Lord basically said, "Did you just speak out of turn?" Burns his face and then tells him, "Get the fuck out of my palace. Get the fuck out of my nation. You're expelled. You can come back when you find the Avatar." Which was kind of a joke because the Avatar hadn't been seen for 100 years. It was assumed that the Avatar had been killed off and there was no need to worry about it. And of course, within a few months of being banished, the Avatar is discovered by Zuko and his uncle, the Fire Lord's brother, Iroh, who in my opinion is the best character in this entire series. For many reasons, we'll get into that in a little bit. But basically throughout the first season, Zuko and Iroh are chasing after Aang, Katara, and Sokka as he makes his way to the North Pole to learn waterbending, which is the first of the 3 elements he tries to learn. Now, I said this to a friend of mine. If Avatar the Last Airbender only had this one season, I'd probably still be talking about it with you guys right now because it's still... Season 1 alone is one of the best shows I've still ever watched. It had a pretty solid plot. There were no plot holes or anything like that. It offered a lot of good world building, explaining how the nations had come to be where they are in these last 100 years, how there's a lot of poverty and famine and a lot of war-torn villages, refugees. The world is in a bad place right now, and we learn that Aang has to learn all these elements pretty soon because within the few next coming months, there's going to be a comet that passes over the Earth. And that comet is so strong, with, heat and power that it would give the Fire Nation such a strong power that they could basically take over the world within those few minutes. So it's Aang's job to, kick this guy's ass and save the day. And, that continues on into Season 2. And out of the 3 seasons, I'm going to say that Season 2 was actually my favorite. Season 2 is titled Book 2, Earth. And the main idea of Season 2 is not only when Aang learns to earthbend, but I believe that almost the entire season is spent in the Earth Kingdom, or parts of the Earth Kingdom. And, as Aang, Sokka, and Katara continue their journey they come across a young girl named Toph, who is a blind girl, but she's probably the best earthbender we see in the entire show. Almost like a Daredevil type of scenario. Like she can't see, but she uses her other senses to become even stronger. And basically her sense of touch with her feet helps her feel everything around her, understand where everyone is, what everyone's doing. And she uses that to her advantage and is also a very strong earthbender. And she becomes Aang's new master. Oh, and I kind of glossed over it. While Aang did get some lessons in waterbending in the North Pole from, a great waterbending master, Katara winds up becoming his full-time master because throughout the first season, she goes from being very timid and shy and not eager to express her waterbending skills. And by the time season 1 is over, she's already pretty damn capable. So, in season 2, once our 4 heroes now are all together, they make their way into the capital city of the Earth Kingdom, Ba Sing Se. And there's no war there. But at the same time, while not even tracking them down, Uncle Iroh and Prince Zuko wind up in the city too. At this point of the show, once season 1 had ended, Zuko's very, he's in a bad place. He thinks he needs to capture the Avatar to become, the savior of the Fire Nation. He thinks that's his destiny. That's like his shtick throughout this whole thing. Destiny, destiny, destiny. But Iroh's almost like, Iroh is the mentor, elderly figure, as we've seen in other shows like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and even, like Star Wars. He's like the Yoda character, but what's really cool is he's not training the hero. Technically, he's training the villain, but he's not training the villain to become the future, evil ruler of the Fire Nation. He wants his nephew to be different. He wants to break that cycle of violence and chaos. He wants his nephew to, one day, whether it's as a ruler of the Fire Nation or just a normal kid, to just do right by people, to, show love and peace. And I think that's, just another reason why he's so great. Iroh's also very funny, a lot of his, wisdom, sometimes it comes off as funny, he's saying it at the wrong time. He's goofy in the right way, and everything with him is tea, tea, tea. He loves his tea. He values it above everything else. Nothing is as important to him in his life as tea. And when they get to Ba Sing Se, the two of them, they actually sneak in as refugees. They're both ready in a way to start a new life, while Zuko is still kind of in the mindset of, my destiny, my destiny. Iroh's trying to show him, look, there's a better way, there's an easier way. We can just be normal people and live happy, peaceful lives. And they wind up opening a tea shop, which is just, it's just perfect. It doesn't get better than that. So while Aang and the rest of the gang are in Ba Sing Se, trying to get in contact with the Earth King to tell him what's going on, because they found out information about when the Fire Nation is going to attack all the nations. They can't get in contact with him because the city is brainwashed to sum things up quickly. And while this is all going on, we actually get one filler episode. Now, usually when people hear filler episodes, it's just taking, it's just a stupid episode that goes away from the plot. It just wastes my time. It serves no purpose. Now, obviously, there's been filler episodes in different shows and stuff where that's not the case, and it is pretty good. But this filler episode of this show, might potentially be the best episode in the whole series, which is just insane. So it's made up of about 6 or 7 tiny little episodes or clips. But and the name of the whole episode is called Tales of Ba Sing Se. So basically, each of the characters I've discussed gets their own little episode, little scene, whether it's Aang finding different animals in the city and trying to release them from being captive, to the girls just spending a girls' day, which is something they don't get to do because they travel the world. Even Zuko gets an episode where he actually goes out with a girl that visits the tea shop and They clearly like each other to some degree. But the most important episode is the one about Uncle Iroh. And I believe it's just called The Tale of Iroh. Now, in this episode, we see Iroh by himself, just going around the town, buying a picnic basket, buying some food, buying these different things. It looks like he's going, to have a picnic. And I figured when I watched it, he was going to go just take Zuko out and they were just going to, enjoy a nice day, in the sun, something like that. But as the whole episode goes on, he bumps into different people in the city and he continues to offer wisdom to them as he does to Zuko. And they're pretty helpful, advice. The things he says in all these episodes, including this one, are things that people who watch the show can actually try and take away. And it's pretty cool. But then the episode just stabs you right in the back, because the episode ends with him going up to a hill and sitting next to a tree. And when he opens up the picnic basket, he takes out a picture of his son, who we had learned briefly in another episode had died in a battle at the same city he's in now. Iroh used to be the main general of the Fire Nation, and he had the worst defeat for the Fire Nation at this city. He couldn't capture it, and his son died in the process. And the episode ends with him just singing a song about his son coming home from war, which didn't happen. And he just sings this super, super sad song. And then to really make it worse, as that episode ends, the screen zooms out and it says, "In memory of Mako," who was the voice actor for Uncle Iroh. He had died a few months before that episode aired. So, I mean, Jesus, man. This is a show on Nickelodeon that made me feel more emotions than any show I can think of in recent memory, other than Hold the Door. That's about it. So, kudos to Mako for being such a great voice for this character. And kudos to the creators for making something so, heart-wrenching, just horrible to watch. And to wrap up season 2, we continue to see that Zuko is on his way toward becoming not evil. But one person pushes him right back into that, and it's his younger sister, Azula, who is out of her fucking mind. She is just a product of the environment she grew up in. She's kind of like a Joffrey Baratheon in a way. When you grow up in a world where you're entitled and, your father is hell-bent on killing everyone that doesn't agree with him, you're going to come off a little off. Zuko gets this in a way too, but he was a little bit different because when he was younger, his mother was the complete opposite. She was loving and caring, and they had a very special bond, whereas Azula was much closer with her father as they showed those more aggressive traits. And Azula was definitely even off as a child to the point that her mother was so worried for her, for her well-being, but Azula only saw that as her mother viewing her as a monster, which wasn't the case. But basically, Azula tracks down Zuko, and she says, "Help me capture the Avatar right now, and you can go home a hero." And Zuko just like, "Oh, okay." He goes right back to, his old ways of, I have to go home to be a hero. I have to do this. And he helps his sister, potentially, we think in the moment, actually kill Aang, because she electrocutes him, and it looks like he's actually dead. And, but Uncle Iroh actually betrays them both and attacks them, and gives Katara and Sokka a chance to get Aang out of there. Now we learn he's alive, but the rest of the Fire Nation assumes that he's dead, and with this, coming to fruition, it looks like the Fire Lord just has to wait for that comet, and then he could take over the world. Now luckily, Katara was able to heal Aang, and they spend the next few weeks in hiding while he slowly recovers. And that is the beginning of Season 3, which is titled Book 3, Fire. Now this is finally where Aang starts realizing he only has a few weeks left. He has to get ready to fight the Fire Lord. He doesn't know if he's ready. He thinks he's ready. His friends are encouraging, but he has a lot of doubt. And then who comes along to teach him firebending, the last thing that he really does need to take on the Fire Lord? But Zuko.
Hello? Zuko here.
And he comes in, he's trying to prove his worth to them. He's trying to explain he's made mistakes. We see in an episode that he actually flees the Fire Nation. He betrays his sister and father. And unfortunately, he thinks his uncle hates him at this point because his uncle is now in jail because of Zuko's betrayal of, potentially joining Aang and the rest of them, but he sided with Azula instead. And slowly, Aang and the rest of them give Zuko a chance. He teaches Aang firebending with the little time they have.
Time? What time do you think we have?
And then, on the day of the comet, Aang finds the Fire Lord, and with the help of all his friends working together to slow down the Fire Nation, and Zuko actually defeating his sister with the help of Katara, the Fire Lord is defeated, and Aang just straight up owns his ass. Now, everyone was telling Aang prior to this, you have to kill the Fire Lord. You have to kill him, you have to kill him, you have to kill him. But, Aang being raised by monks, they taught him that killing is not the way to go. I mean, he's even a vegetarian. He won't even eat meat.
It's not the Jedi way. He must live.
That's how dedicated he is. And then Aang pulls a full 360 on the audience, and he, instead of killing the Fire Lord, he literally takes his firebending away from him in this super dramatic moment, and basically just looks at him and says, "You are nothing now. I took everything away from you. You can't hurt anyone anymore."
You lose! Good day, sir!
And it's really, really cool. And in that final episode, the Fire Lord is defeated. And since Azula is defeated as well, Zuko winds up becoming the new Fire Lord. And in doing so, he doesn't continue, the Fire Nation on the path of war and destruction. But he ends the war, and he, brings peace to all four nations, which is pretty cool. And him and the Avatar spend the rest of their lives, working on creating that peace for the rest of the world, along with the rest of the gang. And there's a lot more to it than that. I'm giving a very brief description, even though we're only 20 minutes into we're already 20 minutes in or so. There's obviously a lot more to this show than I can really get into. If I tried to get into all of it, this would be, God, I couldn't tell you how long this whole podcast would be. I'm giving you just a little taste, just the tip. And all I can really say after this is, this really is one of the best shows I've ever watched. And it's up there with some of the best, pop culture shows out there in terms of, science fiction and fantasy, like Game of Thrones, even Lord of the Rings. It offers something that each of those had, but it brings them all together. Whether it's great characters, great art, great plot, great everything. And like I said, the two villains or bad guys in this series, Iroh and Zuko, might be possibly my favorite characters in the whole thing. But everyone is great. I think I really love every character other than Azula. She's the only one that I couldn't get into, I guess. Maybe the next time I watch it, maybe I'll appreciate her character a little bit more. I understand where they were going with her. I think maybe it was just a little rushed, kind of like Daenerys, but we'll see. It's sad knowing that this exact plot line didn't continue. I know obviously there's The Legend of Korra, which I will be watching at some point, and I know that sometime soon Netflix is going to be making a live action version of The Last Airbender, which will be pretty cool to see. But like I said, I wish that, The Last Airbender got like a fourth season, maybe when they were older, to see what they were up to, but I understand why they didn't do that, and that's okay. And maybe that's for the best, because maybe it would ruin what is possibly one of the best shows ever made, or at least that I've discovered. So if you're listening, please watch it if you haven't watched it before. I just watched it for the first time, and I absolutely treasure it. If you've watched it before, I'm sure you already know everything I've talked about. You feel the same way. Watch it again. It's on Netflix. Get to it. Watch it again. Enjoy it all over again. At that rate, I think we're done here. I've been rambling on long enough. So yeah, I guess that's it from me. And we are